They tore his sister's shirt in public. Jax's voice, calm but deadly, "Take your hands off my sister," through the large panoramic windows of the Roadster Diner. It's a classic American box on Route 9. Worn red vinyl booths, a checkerboard linoleum floor faded by decades of footsteps, and chrome trim that gleams dully where the polish regularly hits. The air smells of stale coffee, frying bacon, and the faint, clean scent of disinfectant. At a booth in the center of this quiet tableau sits Chloe, 22. She has thoughtful eyes and shoulder-length brown hair that she tucks behind her ear as she reads a well-worn copy of East of Eden propped against the ketchup bottle. She wears a simple blue button-up shirt, the top 2 buttons undone for comfort. This is her sanctuary, her escape. On the table before her, a half-eaten plate of pancakes, a small notebook, and a ceramic mug of coffee, now lukewarm. The only other patrons are 2 men seated at the counter, their backs to the room. They wear weathered leather biker jackets adorned with patches and insignia. One, a larger man with a salt and pepper beard, sips his coffee methodically. The other, leaner and younger, stares out the window, watching the occasional truck rumble past. They are a silent, still part of the scenery. The bell above the diner door jingles, sharp and cheerful. 2 men in their late 20s walk in. They wear new, shiny black leather jackets that look more for fashion than function. Vinny, the leader, has a slicked-back ponytail and a cocky swagger. Leo, broader and slower, follows him like a shadow. They scan the room, their eyes lingering a moment too long on Chloe before sliding into the booth directly behind hers. Chloe is lost in her book, underlining a passage with a pencil. The world has melted away. The low murmur of the 2 men's conversation from the booth behind her begins to intrude. It's not the volume, but the tone, a low, aggressive rumble. Vinny Os, low suggestive, told him, "If you want a piece, you gotta take it. Nobody's handing out free lunches." Leo OS, chuckling, "Yeah." Nobody. Chloe shifts uncomfortably, trying to shrink into her booth. She takes a sip of her cold coffee, the bitterness sharp on her tongue. Vinny OS, see, all, alone. A pretty little thing like that, reading a book, probably waiting for someone to show her a good time. A cold knot tightens in Chloe's stomach. She stares intently at the page, but the words have become a blur of black ink. She considers flagging down the waitress, but she's disappeared into the kitchen. Suddenly, a shadow falls over her table. Vinny is standing there, leaning against the partition of her booth, a smarmy smile plastered on his face. "Vinny, that any good?" "The book. Looks heavy." Chloe doesn't look up. "Chloe, it's fine." "Vinny, fine." "Eh, you from around here? Don't think I've seen you before." "Chloe, I'm just having coffee and reading." She makes a point of looking back down at her book. A clear dismissal. It's the wrong move. Vinny's smile vanishes. He slides into the booth opposite her, uninvited. The vinyl creaks in protest. Leo gets up and moves to stand at the end of her table, blocking her in. "Vinny, see, I find that rude. I'm just being friendly. This is a friendly town. Chloe, please, I just want to be left alone." Her voice is tight, a thin wire of fear stretched to its limit. "Vinny alone? That's no fun." He reaches out, not for her, but for her book. He picks it up, reads the spine, and scoffs. Vinny Steinbeck figures. All about trouble, ain't it? He tosses the book onto the table. It skids, knocking over her coffee mug. Brown liquid floods across the formica, dripping onto the seat and her lap. Chloe gasps, jumping up. "Chloe, what is wrong with you?" This is it, the point of no return. The 2 bikers at the counter have turned slightly. The younger one meets Chloe's panicked eyes for a split second. His gaze is calm, assessing. "Vinny, whoa, clumsy me. Here, let me help." As Chloe tries to wipe the coffee from her jeans, Vinny stands up and grabs her by the arms. His grip is like iron. "Chloe, let go of me, get off." "Leo, hey, calm down. He's just helping." Leo moves in, crowding her against the booth. The smell of his cheap cologne is suffocating. "Vinny, we're just being friendly. You need to learn some manners." Chloe struggles, trying to pull her arms free. In the scuffle, Leo's hand, meant to push her back down, grabs at the front of her shirt. There's a sickening sound of tearing fabric. Rip. Time stops. The blue fabric of her shirt tears open from the collar down, exposing her shoulder and the strap of her tank top underneath. Chloe freezes, her shock and humiliation so complete it steals her breath. A single hot tear escapes down her cheek. The diner is silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. And in that silence, the sound of a stool scraping heavily against the checkered floor echoes like a gunshot. The two bikers are on their feet. The sound of the tearing fabric was a punctuation mark in the diner's chaos, a period that ended one reality and began a far darker one. For Chloe, the world didn't just slow, it shattered. The struggle, the heat, the loud voices, it all vanished, replaced by a vacuum of silence in her head. All that was left was the shocking cold kiss of the air on her exposed skin. She could feel the rough vinyl of the booth against her back through the torn shirt, a mundane sensation that somehow amplified the surreal horror of the moment. Her arms, still held in Vinnie's vice-like grip, went limp. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a cold, seeping shame. She saw Leo's eyes, wide with a flicker of surprise that quickly morphed into a twisted kind of triumph. He looked at the tear at her shoulder, and a slow, ugly smile spread across his face. Leo leering, "See now, we're getting somewhere." That voice, dripping with entitlement, broke the spell of her shock. A single, hot tear of pure humiliation escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She wasn't crying from fear anymore, but from a profound, soul-crushing violation. In that frozen moment, another sound cut through the thick air, far more deliberate and menacing than the rip of fabric. Scrape. The heavy, grating sound of a stool being pushed back with deliberate, unhurried force. Every eye in the diner, including Vinnie's and Leo's, snapped toward the source. The two bikers at the counter were now standing. The older one with the salt and pepper beard had his arms crossed, his expression a granite mask of cold assessment. But it was the younger one who held the room's attention. He was taller than he had seemed sitting down, with a lean, coiled strength. His face was all sharp angles, shadowed under the brim of a worn baseball cap. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue, were not on Chloe's exposed skin, not on the spilled coffee, but locked directly onto Vinnie's face. There was no rage there, not yet. It was something far more dangerous, a calm, predatory stillness. He took a step forward, then another. His heavy motorcycle boots were silent on the checkered floor, a testament to his controlled movement. "Vinnie, trying to regain swagger. This is a private conversation, pal. Mind your business." The biker didn't even acknowledge he had spoken. His gaze was fixed, his path unwavering. He stopped a few feet from the booth, his presence seeming to suck the oxygen from the space. "Biker," his voice is low, a gravelly rumble. "Take your hands off my sister." The words were simple, flat. They held no request, only command. A new kind of tension gripped Chloe. It was Jax, her brother, the one who'd taught her how to ride a bike, who'd secretly covered for her when she stayed out past curfew in high school. The one who existed in a world she only glimpsed during his rare, quiet visits. Seeing him here, in this context, was both a tidal wave of relief and a spike of terror. This wasn't the boy she grew up with. This was Jax when the world had pushed him too far. Vinnie, emboldened by numbers and pride, puffed out his chest, though he didn't release Chloe's arms. "Vinnie, your sister, she, could use some lessons in manners. We were just educating her." Jax's eyes finally flickered down to Chloe. For a fraction of a second, the ice in them melted, replaced by a flash of something pained and protective. He saw the tear in her shirt, the track of the tear on her face, the way she was held captive in the booth. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching furiously along his jawline. When his eyes returned to Vinnie, the calm was gone, replaced by a glacial fire. "Jax, you have 3 seconds to let her go and walk out that door." 1. Leo, the bigger one, finally found his voice, stepping forward to loom beside Vinnie. "Leo, you and what army, pretty boy?" Jax didn't even look at him. His focus was entirely on Vinnie, the clear leader. Jax, too, the older biker, the one named Bear, had moved without anyone noticing. He now stood casually near the diner's exit, his massive arms still crossed, blocking their only way out. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Vinnie's bravado finally cracked. The reality of the situation was dawning on him. This wasn't about intimidating a lone girl anymore. He was in a cage with a wolf, and the door was guarded by a grizzly. His grip on Chloe's arms loosened, just slightly. It was all the invitation Jax needed. The space between two and action was a single, held breath. Vinnie's grip on Chloe's arms slackened, a subconscious yielding to the primal threat standing before him. It was the flicker of doubt Jax had been waiting for. Jax moved not with a wild swing, but with terrifying economy. His left hand, fast as a striking snake, clamped down on Vinny's wrist, the one still holding Chloe. He dug his thumb into a pressure point on the inner arm. Vinny's eyes bulged, a grunt of shock and pain escaping his lips as his fingers sprang open, releasing Chloe. Vinny gasping, "Hey!" Before Vinny could form another word, Jax used his own momentum against him. He yanked the captured wrist forward and down, pulling Vinny off balance and sending him stumbling headfirst out of the booth. Vinny crashed into the edge of the next table, sending sugar shakers and menus flying before collapsing in a heap on the checkerboard floor. Chloe, freed from the vice-like grip, scrambled back into the corner of the red booth, pulling the torn edges of her blue shirt together with trembling hands. Her wide eyes were fixed on her brother, a mixture of awe and fear freezing her in place. Leo, seeing his friend taken down so effortlessly, roared and charged. He was bigger, heavier, a battering ram of brute force. He threw a wide, looping punch aimed at the side of Jax's head. Jax didn't retreat. He pivoted on the ball of his foot, letting the clumsy fist whistle past his ear. As Leo's momentum carried him forward, Jax brought his elbow down in a sharp, brutal arc onto the back of Leo's neck. The sound was a sickening thwack of bone and muscle meeting hard resistance. Leo's charge turned into a staggering collapse. He fell to his knees, groaning, his head lolling forward, disoriented and stunned. The entire exchange had taken less than 5 seconds. Silence descended once more, broken only by Vinny's pained groans as he clutched his injured wrist and Leo's ragged breathing. The golden sunlight still streamed through the windows, illuminating the spilled coffee, the overturned table, and the 2 would-be tough guys now broken on the floor. Jax stood over them, his chest rising and falling steadily. He wasn't even winded. He looked down at them, his expression one of cold contempt. He finally turned his back on them, a deliberate act of dismissal that spoke volumes about the threat they now posed, which was zero. His focus shifted entirely to Chloe. The predator was gone. In his place was just a brother, his face etched with a pain that had nothing to do with the fight. He walked to the booth, his steps slow and deliberate now, not wanting to startle her. Jax, his voice soft, the gravel gone, Chloe. She flinched, a tiny, involuntary movement, and his heart broke a little. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "Jax, hey, it's me. You're safe. They're not going to touch you again." He shrugged out of his own worn leather jacket, the patches of his club, a winged skull with the text Road Ghosts MC, softened by wear and sun. He held it out to her, not moving closer. "Jax here." Chloe looked from his eyes, filled with a concern she hadn't seen in years, to the offered jacket. Slowly, her trembling hand reached out and took it. The leather was heavy, warm from his body heat, and smelled faintly of gasoline, coffee, and him. She pulled it around her shoulders, enveloping herself in its protective weight. It swallowed her whole, covering the torn shirt completely. For the first time since the fabric had ripped, she didn't feel exposed. A sob finally broke free from her chest, a shuddering, relieved breath. From his post by the door, Bear finally spoke. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. "Bear cops'll be comin', someone always calls." Jax didn't take his eyes off Chloe. Jax let them. He knelt down, now at eye level with her in the booth. He kept his hands to himself, letting her set the pace. "Jax, can you walk? We need to go." Chloe nodded, wiping her face with the sleeve of his jacket, his sleeve, now hers. She took his proffered hand, her own small and cold in his calloused grip. As he helped her out of the booth, she leaned into him, her strength finally giving out. He supported her easily, one arm around her shoulders, holding the jacket closed in front of her. He guided her toward the door, stepping over Leo, who was still trying to push himself up from the floor. As they passed Bear, the big man fell into step behind them, a silent, imposing rearguard. They left Vinny and Leo on the floor of the Roadster diner, surrounded by the ruins of a breakfast they had turned into a nightmare. The bell above the door jingled once, a cheerful, normal sound marking their exit from the scene of the crime. But outside, in the bright, ordinary daylight of Route 9, the aftermath was just beginning. The sunlight outside the Roadster diner was blinding after the dim, tense interior. The world moved at its usual pace. A truck rumbled past, birds chirped in a nearby tree. The normalcy of it felt like an insult to Chloe, who was huddled deep inside Jax's heavy leather jacket. Jax guided her, his arm a firm, steadying presence around her shoulders, toward 2 motorcycles parked a short distance away, a heavy, chromed-out Harley for Bear, and a sleek, matte-black Triumph for Jax. Bear, his voice a low grumble, "I'll smooth things over inside. Delay the narrative. You get her home." Jax gave a single, sharp nod. Home was a complicated word for them, but he knew what Bear meant. Somewhere safe. Jax, thanks, Bear. Bear clapped a massive hand on Jax's shoulder, a gesture of absolute solidarity, before turning and walking back toward the diner's entrance, a mountain moving to reshape the landscape of the story the police would hear. Jax turned his attention to his bike and to Chloe. Her eyes were distant, staring at the chrome of his handlebars but seeing nothing. Jax, Chloe, look at me. She slowly lifted her gaze to his. The shock was still there, a film over her usual bright intelligence. Jax, I need you to hold on to me tight. You understand? Don't let go. He handed her his own simpler black helmet. She took it with numb fingers, fumbling as she put it on. The world became muted, the sounds of the road distant. It felt like a cocoon. Jax swung a leg over the Triumph and kick-started it. The engine roared to life, a powerful, vibrating beast between his legs. He reached back, found her hands, and wrapped them around his waist. Jax, tighter. She pressed herself against his back, her face against the cool leather. She could feel the solid strength of him, the rhythm of his breathing, the rumble of the engine transferring from his body to hers. It was the opposite of the violent, chaotic grabbing in the diner. This was a chosen anchor. He pulled out onto Route 9, the wind whipping past them. There was no destination in mind, just motion. He drove, not toward her small apartment or his clubhouse, but onto the long, winding backroads that snaked through the hills outside town. The speed, the focus required to navigate the curves, the sheer physicality of the ride, it was a purge. For him, and he hoped, for her. Chloe closed her eyes inside the helmet. The tears came then, not the silent tears of shame from the diner, but hot, angry, relieving sobs that were swallowed by the roar of the engine and the wind. She cried for her torn shirt, for her violated peace, for the fear that had frozen her. She held onto her brother, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had just proven terrifyingly fragile. After nearly an hour, Jax slowed the bike, pulling onto a gravel overlook that offered a sweeping view of the valley below. He cut the engine. The silence was deafening. He felt her loosen her grip, but she didn't let go. He waited, giving her the silence, letting her break it. Finally, her voice was small, muffled by the helmet and his jacket. Chloe, how? Were you there? Jax sighed, staring out at the horizon. Jax, Bear and I were just grabbing coffee after a long ride. Just a pit stop. I saw you the second we walked in. You were in your own world, buried in that book. I was going to come over, say hi. Then those two pricks walked in. He paused, the memory tightening his jaw. Jax, I saw them looking at you. I was about to get up and sit with you when they made their move. I was too slow getting to you, Chloe. I'm sorry. The raw guilt in his voice was unmistakable. Chloe finally let go of his waist and slid off the bike. She took off the helmet, her hair a mess, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes were clearer. She hugged his jacket tighter around herself. Chloe, don't you dare apologize. You were there. You came. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the man he'd become, a man who carried violence with a chilling ease but who directed it with absolute precision to protect what he loved. Chloe, what happens now? With them? The police? Jax got off the bike and stood beside her. Jax, Bear will handle it. He'll tell the cops the truth, that they assaulted a woman and we intervened. The diner has cameras. It'll be on camera, Chloe. What they did. He let that sink in. The evidence was on their side. Jax, but you need to decide what you want to do. If you want to press charges, I'll be with you every step. If you want to forget any of this ever happened, we can do that too. It's your call, your choice. He was giving her back the control that had been so violently stolen from her in that red booth. Chloe looked out at the vast, peaceful landscape. The tremble in her hands was finally subsiding, replaced by a slow-burning ember of anger. Chloe, I want to press charges. Jax nodded, a look of fierce pride in his eyes. Jax, okay. Then that's what we do. He put a gentle hand on her shoulder, over the leather of his jacket. Jax, let's go home, Chloe. For real this time. She nodded, pulling the jacket, her armor, his promise, tighter. She put the helmet back on and got on the bike behind him, holding on just as tightly as before. The road ahead was long, and the healing would take time, but she was no longer alone in the fight. The roar of the engine was no longer just noise. It was the sound of her reclaimed freedom, carrying her away from the nightmare and toward a future where she was safe, protected, and believed.